tourism became the engine of growth that has seen the transformation of many of the smaller economies in particular, whose GDP and per capita has increased significantly because of the manner in which tourism permeates through the economy and is able to spread income, not necessarily wealth, but income through the different levels and classes within the countries. And what we have seen, for the most part, and certainly when we were last in government, and it has continued, has been a soreness by some that the division of MDCs and LDCs no longer reflects the economic reality of a post-independence Caribbean. I'm not sure that they're correct, but it's the dominant conversation, whether in these types of meetings, whether in general Caribbean community meetings, or whether in the Caribbean Development Bank at different points. And this notion that the experience of Guyana hitherto, and I say so with Minister Jordan present, and I say hitherto again, as a hippie country through the years, the experience of Jamaica, multiple IMF programs, the experience now of Barbados, an IMF program, and the peaks and valleys of Trinidad, I put it no more, no less, have caused, therefore, conversations to permeate that may have led to a anemic approach towards the appropriate capitalization of this fund. And I ask us to pause today to reflect upon whether the mechanism that is to assist disadvantaged countries, sectors, and regions can only be a mechanism that is premised on the state or on donor countries who are going to look at the contributions of the state first to see whether we are helping ourselves before help is delivered to us. And I speak from the perspective of being here the last time round when this organization was being established, and the extent to which we anticipated its growth has not come. And against that background, and against the background of a dichotomy that is an age dichotomy, and that is clearly one that is providing great angst, if nothing else, I ask us whether the time has not come for us to revisit the charter that is establishing this fund and make it possible for us to be able to reach out to the people of the region, to create a win-win opportunity for the people of the region to be able to help fund the instruments that are needed to fuel growth and to build resilience within this Caribbean community. I have been speaking over the course of the last 8 months about the concept of regional growth and resilience bonds. And I raise it against the background that the domestic savings within the Caribbean community is on or about $49 billion US dollars. $49 billion US dollars. And we need to ask ourselves whether our citizens are happy to have those level of savings attract rates of return uniform savings rate that hover at about 0.1%. Nowhere near what is reasonable against the background of inflation or even against the background of rates and charges, such that persons may end up in a net position delivering to the bank rather than receiving from in some instances. At the same time, our countries and our companies are accessing capital at much higher rates. In some instances, constrained by small sizes and an inability to be able to negotiate better rates because of that smallness and that lack of power. Worse still, if you come as a disadvantaged country, a disadvantaged company, a disadvantaged sector, a disadvantaged region. For the essence of disadvantage is in fact the lack of access to power and to negotiating space. I've come here this morning to share one idea and one idea alone, and to recommit Barbados to this process. And I start first with the recommitting of Barbados, because regrettably I have inherited a situation where my government, having previously committed to the replenishment of the second cycle, the last government never sought to honor its obligations. And Barbados will honor its obligations before the end of this second cycle, in spite of being in an IMF program. Because fundamentally, our future is inextricably linked to a successful CARICOM single market and single economy. It's not an easy task, and we're working with the fund now to determine how best we can settle those arrears which we've inherited. But I say this conscious that each nation state in this region that believes in the worthiness of this project called the single market, who believes that this is a benefit with respect to the different pillars of cooperation under the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas, that we have a duty within this region to carry along the least among us in the same way that we have that duty at the national level, and it is one that all of us readily accept in a post-1930s and a post-independence Caribbean. Our obligation, therefore, is to build and to create the opportunities, because at the end of the day, governments don't trade. Individuals and companies do. And we have, therefore, to create that framework that allows not only the countries who believe they may be being disadvantaged, not just they to borrow, but the companies and the different regions within countries who may require that additional assistance. But for a fund that is hovering at about 100 million US, you're not going to be able to play that role to the number of countries in the region, and to believe that this is going to add serious value to the moving forward of this regional project. And we have therefore to come to recognize that it is in the context of the issuance of growth and resilience bonds, in my humble opinion, that we can expand significantly the capital base of this fund and to allow it to play the role that is absolutely critical to growth within this region. and in the sub-region in particular. In our own country, tourism is by far the largest sector that drives direct and indirect economic activity, alongside an international business sector. But we have a banking sector, a commercial banking sector, that is lukewarm at best with respect to the consideration of projects that drive tourism development at the national level. Now, how do you have that kind of disconnect? And at what point do we understand that the response of some of the Canadian banks that have been reviewing their options about their continued existence or expansion in the region has fundamentally to do with anemic growth at best in a region that is limited in size? And in a world where capital moves freely, and certainly more freely than we allow people and human beings to, those banks will find the opportunities that give them the greatest return. And if they can find a greater return in Central America or Latin America, they're not going to humbug themselves in the same way that de-risking and correspondent banking has become a major issue for us because we are just too small to matter and to be concerned about. It's not that they believe definitively that something is wrong, but it is too small to even bother to take the time and the expense to do the assessment of the risk. So you abandon the relationship and you de-risk. That's all it is. Now, against that background, we have an obligation both at the national level and at the regional level to create the instruments that will drive growth, because without those instruments there is no oxygen. There is no oxygen for growth. And I pray that over the course of the next year, Caribbean leaders and Caribbean countries will come to recognize that one of the most significant developments that we can contribute to will be the unlocking of capital within our banking system through mechanisms such as this Regional Development Fund to play the absolutely vital role of the right sizing of the disadvantaged sectors, countries, and companies, such that we can have a balanced approach to the development of the single market and to the platform necessary for the single economy. We've already taken the decision of the private sector. The private sector has banded in its own regional association now and are at the table along with the labor movement, because we recognize that while we may not be able to see all of the full architecture of a single economy come together, particularly in the absence of macroeconomic convergence, that it doesn't preclude us from seeing significant progress on key sectors of the economy, as you heard just now, is needed. In the area of renewable energy, in the area of food security, in the area of ICT development such that we have a single domestic space within the region, and the notion of highly inflated costs for roaming and other transactions within the ICT sector at a time when we need it to be our propulsion regionally and to the rest of the world. And in the area of the maritime and air bridges that are necessary to keep us connected. Heads have chosen these 4 areas as the areas of development and growth for immediate private sector collaboration. But that collaboration needs capital. And if we get this equation correct, then we are going to underprovide and underserve our potential. I hope that this meeting will allow you to reflect and refine these possibilities, to allow us to see the issuance of CARICOM growth and resilience bonds. For if we are able to attract even just 5% of the savings within the region, then we are in the vicinity of 2.5 billion US, which is 25 times the amount that this CARICOM Development Fund now currently has responsibility for. In Barbados, we have an old saying that has stood the test of time, and you will forgive me if I use it, but it is most appropriate. And that is that one blow is kill old cow. And not that there's any old cow around, but the notion of the average citizen in the region being able to play that definable difference in the funding of this region's development is what must be embraced, and embraced with vigor. And it is then that we come to our development partners standing straight and tall like men and women of dignity, recognizing that the need for partnership is not only within the region, but if we look at the resilience component alone, we stand at the front line having to build resilience, not because of actions of our predecessors and ourselves, but because of a world that has ignored the consequences of its development being unchecked, such that we face now the existential threat of climate change. And whether we like it or not, this region, along with the Arctic and the Antarctic summer sheets, along with other coral islands across the globe, is at the front line. Unless we are tempted to forget 2017 and the absolute spectacle of climate refugees stands in our immediate memory. Hence the need for global cooperation on the basis of climate, on the basis of security, but above all else, on the basis of a shared concept of development and humanity. But I am one of those who feel that our first responsibility is to help ourselves before we ask others to help us. I pray this board and this meeting will allow us to advance the process. And I say so conscious that the next meeting of the heads of government of the Caribbean community in regular session is at the intersessional in February of next year, which will be in Bridgetown. And I hope that at Bridgetown we can see a paper that will allow us to be able to change the articles of this body to allow it to be that entity that can relate to ordinary Caribbean people for the issuance of Caribbean growth and resilience bonds that will, for perhaps the first time, really see us take ownership of the financing mechanisms of the region at a regional level in a way that we have not completely done since assuming as countries in a post-federation. I thank you and God bless you, and for those who are visiting, might I urge you that you really don't have to rush home this week with crop over on. And for those who are intent on defying my urgings, there are some good fets on today and tomorrow still. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you very much, Honorable Prime Minister. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we're at that point where after that very stimulating account from the Prime Minister, it would be only appropriate for you to refresh yourselves with some light refreshments that we have awaiting you outside, and we're going to take a 15-minute break. I believe? Yes, I believe 15 minutes, if you would. Thank you.